Before we begin, viewer discretion is strongly advised. The following is for educational and entertainment purposes only. This is the verbatim federal courtroom testimony of the Sean Diddy Combs trial as reported by Inner City Press. The courtroom was already packed to capacity on day 17 of the Sean Diddy Combs trial. Legal analysts had predicted a routine day of technical testimony from financial experts tracking suspicious transactions across Combs' empire. No one expected what happened next. At precisely 10:17 a.m., as the prosecution prepared to call their next witness, the heavy wooden doors at the back of the courtroom swung open. A court officer leaned in and whispered something to Judge Eleanor Michaels, whose eyebrows shot up in visible surprise. She nodded once, then addressed the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have an unscheduled witness who has approached the court with potentially relevant testimony. The prosecution has been made aware and has agreed to this late addition." The gallery erupted in whispers. Reporters straightened in their seats, phones discreetly sliding into palms despite strict courtroom rules against electronics. Even the jury, fatigued from weeks of testimony, seemed suddenly alert. And then Marshall Mathers, known globally as Eminem, walked into the courtroom. He wasn't dressed in the baggy clothes of his stage persona or the casual attire of his rare public appearances. Instead, he wore a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, white shirt, and subtle navy tie. His normally expressive face was deadly serious, eyes focused straight ahead, not even glancing toward Diddy at the defense table. The room fell silent. Then came the inevitable wave of shocked murmurs. A reporter from the New York Times later described it as the sound of an entire room collectively gasping. Diddy, who had maintained remarkable composure throughout the trial, visibly stiffened. His lead defense attorney, James Rothstein, immediately began writing furious notes. As Eminem approached the witness stand, he moved with purpose. This wasn't a publicity stunt or a chance to settle an old score. His expression conveyed something more profound, a man finally delivering on a mission years in the making. After being sworn in, Eminem sat straight-backed in the witness chair, eyes now surveying the entire courtroom before settling on prosecutor Amanda Chen. "Mr. Mathers," she began, "could you please explain to the court why you've come forward to testify today?" Eminem leaned slightly toward the microphone. "I've been watching this trial unfold like everyone else, and after hearing the testimony from the victims, especially Ms. Ventura, I couldn't stay silent anymore. I've been carrying information for too long, thinking someone else would speak up." He paused, his voice intensifying. "But sometimes you have to be the one to say what everyone knows but won't acknowledge. And what is it that you know, Mr. Mathers? I know that I publicly warned about Sean Combs' behavior years ago, and everyone treated it like it was just another rapper beef or publicity stunt. But it wasn't. I was trying to expose what I knew was happening behind closed doors." The prosecutor nodded. "You're referring to your lyrics that mentioned Mr. Combs over the years?" "Not just lyrics. Though yes, I did try to expose him through my music when other avenues seemed closed." Eminem reached into his suit jacket and removed a small flash drive, holding it up. "But I also have receipts. Actual evidence I've gathered over 20 years in this industry." The courtroom burst into commotion again. Judge Michaels pounded her gavel 3 times. "Order, continue, Ms. Chen." The prosecutor approached. "Your Honor, the witness has submitted this evidence to our office for verification 48 hours ago, as required by court procedure. We've authenticated the materials and shared relevant portions with defense counsel as required." Defense attorney Rothstein stood immediately. "Your Honor, we object to the sudden introduction of this so-called evidence. We've had inadequate time to review." "You've had the legally required time, counselor," Judge Michaels interrupted. "And your objection is noted but overruled. The witness may continue." Eminem's gaze remained steady. "This drive contains emails, text messages, voicemails, and audio recordings spanning from 2001 to 2022. They document a pattern of behavior by Mr. Combs that corroborates what victims in this case have already described." "How did you obtain these materials, Mr. Mathers?" "Some were sent directly to me by people seeking help, but too afraid to come forward themselves. Others were forwarded by concerned industry insiders who knew I had been vocal about Diddy. And some," he paused, "some are my own interactions with him that I documented because they disturbed me. Could you elaborate on your history with the defendant?" Eminem shifted slightly in his seat. "My issues with Sean Combs started around 2001. Most people think it was just music industry rivalry, but it was deeper than that. I witnessed how he operated behind the scenes, the power he wielded, and how he used it. I saw young artists, especially women, enter his orbit confident and talented, then emerge different, controlled, afraid. Was there a specific incident that concerned you? In 2002, I attended an industry event where Diddy was present. After the main party, select people were invited to an exclusive gathering at a private location. I went curious but cautious. What I saw there, Eminem shook his head slowly. Young women were brought in clearly intoxicated or drugged. NDAs were being signed, phones confiscated. I left immediately and started warning people, but it was like shouting into the void. And that's when you began referencing Mr. Combs in your music. It started subtly, then became more direct over the years. But people just thought it was typical hip-hop rivalry. They didn't understand I was trying to sound an alarm. The prosecutor approached a screen that had been set up. Your Honor, we'd like to play an audio recording provided by Mr. Mathers, authenticated by our technical team as unaltered. This is labeled Diddy Studio 2006 in the evidence catalog. The judge nodded her approval. The courtroom speakers crackled to life, and suddenly Diddy's voice filled the room, younger but unmistakable. I told you how this works. Either you're with the family the way the family operates, or you're against us. There's no middle ground. These girls signed up for this life. Everyone pays their dues. You think unintelligible got where she is by just talent? Please, now, either you're in the room as part of it, or you're not in the industry at all. Your choice, but choose now. A second voice responded, nervous, young, unidentifiable. But I didn't know it would be like this. I just wanted to make music. Diddy again. Well, now you know. And knowing means participating or disappearing. Simple as that. The recording ended. The courtroom remained deadly silent. Diddy's face had gone completely impassive, a mask hiding whatever turmoil might exist behind it. Can you provide context for this recording, Mr. Mathers? The prosecutor asked. It was sent to me by a young artist who was seeking advice after encountering Diddy's system. He recorded this interaction secretly terrified, but wanting proof of what was happening. He ultimately left the industry entirely. He was talented, but after refusing Diddy's offer, suddenly no studio would work with him. Do you have more recordings like this? Eminem nodded grimly. 17 in total spanning 2 decades, different voices, different situations, but the same pattern, the same threats, the same system. The prosecutor continued. You mentioned earlier that some of these materials document your own interactions with the defendant. Could you elaborate? In 2009, Diddy approached me at an award show after party. He was friendly at first, congratulating me on my sobriety, saying he respected my new path. Then he invited me to what he called a celebration of my comeback at his Miami home. Eminem's expression hardened. When I declined, his tone changed immediately. He said, and I quote, "You think you're better than this than us? You've been taking shots at me for years. Maybe it's time I showed you what happens to people who cross me." Did you interpret this as a threat? Absolutely, and it wasn't empty. Within weeks, I learned that people in my circle were being approached, offered money for damaging information about me. Studio sessions were mysteriously canceled. A film project I was developing suddenly lost funding. How did you respond? I did what I do, I put it in the music. I became even more direct in my lyrics. But I also started collecting evidence, gathering testimonies from others who had encountered his system. I knew someday the truth would need to come out. The prosecutor nodded. I'd like to present one more piece of evidence submitted by Mr. Mathers. This is an email thread from 2017 authenticated by our cyber team. On the screen appeared an email chain between Diddy and several executives whose names were redacted. The content discussed handling the situation with an unnamed female artist who was making noise about events at a party. One executive suggested the usual arrangement money and an NDA. Diddy's response was chilling. No, she needs to understand consequences, make sure she never works again. Not every problem gets solved with cash. Sometimes you need to make an example. Mr. Mathers, how did you obtain this email? It was forwarded to me by one of the recipients, someone who was becoming increasingly uncomfortable with what they were being asked to participate in. They've provided a sworn affidavit that I've submitted along with the evidence. For the next hour, Eminem methodically walked through the evidence he had accumulated over 2 decades text messages showing coordination of what Diddy called special events, financial records showing payments to people who later claimed they had been paid for their silence, medical records of individuals who had sought treatment after these parties but were too afraid to report what really happened. The defense's cross-examination was aggressive but largely ineffective. Attorney Rothstein attempted to paint Eminem as a longtime rival with a grudge, but Eminem remained composed. "Yes, I've had issues with Sean Combs professionally. That's no secret," Eminem acknowledged. "But this isn't about music or careers or who sold more records. This is about power being abused, people being silenced, and an industry turning a blind eye because someone was too profitable to challenge." "So you took it upon yourself to be judge and jury," Rothstein countered. Eminem shook his head. "No, I took it upon myself to preserve the truth until a real judge and jury could hear it. Today, finally that's happening." As Eminem prepared to step down from the witness stand, Judge Michaels had one final question. "Mr. Mathers, given the serious nature of your testimony and the evidence you've provided, I must ask, why now? Why not come forward sooner with this information?" Eminem looked directly at the judge. "Your Honor, I tried in my own way, through my music, through industry channels. But the system protected him. It wasn't until Cassie Ventura showed extraordinary courage that the wall started to crack. Sometimes it takes one person's bravery to make others brave enough to finally do what they should have done years ago." He then turned toward the jury. "I've been in recovery for many years now. One of the principles we live by is making amends when possible and taking responsibility for our actions. My action was silence when I should have been louder. Today I'm making amends for that." As Eminem exited the courtroom, he passed directly by the defense table. For the first time since entering the room, he locked eyes with Diddy. No words were exchanged, but witnesses described it as an electric moment of recognition, a long-brewing confrontation finally playing out in the most consequential arena possible. Outside the courthouse, as news of Eminem's testimony spread, social media exploded with people re-examining his lyrics over the years, finding the warnings that had been hiding in plain sight. Music journalists began publishing analyses of songs that had seemed like typical diss tracks, but now appeared prophetic. 3 hours after Eminem's testimony concluded, 5 more former music industry executives contacted the prosecution offering to corroborate his evidence with their own. The wall of silence was crumbling. In the days that followed, legal experts would debate the impact of Eminem's testimony on the case, but the court of public opinion had already reached its verdict. As one culture critic wrote for Rolling Stone, "Today we witness something extraordinary, an artist using his platform not for self-promotion or spectacle, but for the truth he's been trying to tell us for decades. Maybe next time we'll listen the first time." Disclaimer: the content above is entirely fictional and created for entertainment purposes only. No verified court evidence or official statements confirm these claims.